The story begins in a prison in Russia, where we see a man named Frank Abagnale Jr. Frank is a dangerous thug who has committed several major scams. At this moment, an FBI agent named Carl returns to America with him. Carl is talking to Frank when Frank's health suddenly starts to deteriorate badly. At first, Carl thinks Frank is pretending, but then he realizes no one can act this much. He rushes to take Frank to the hospital, but Frank uses the moment to escape again. However, the police catch him, and Frank then remembers his story from the beginning. Frank was born into a very happy family. His parents loved each other deeply. One day, Frank's father took him to a shop to buy a suit, but the woman there said the shop was still closed. Frank's father quickly pulled out a necklace and said it didn't belong to her. Because of this clever move, the woman became impressed and allowed them to buy the suit. Frank's father was skilled at such tricks. He then asked Frank to act as his driver, and soon they reached a bank. Soon the bank manager came to receive them. Frank's father had suffered a huge business loss, and they needed a bank loan. Due to an accountant's mistake, his tax payment was delayed, causing an even bigger loss. But despite explaining everything, no bank agreed to help them. The government seized Frank's father's car, property, and money. Despite this crisis, he opened a bank account for Frank. Frank asked, "Why are you doing this? You're already in debt." His father replied, "Don't worry about me. Your life is just beginning. You must live well." Because of the sudden problems at home, Frank had to change schools. On his first day, a boy at the new school started bullying him. He mocked Frank and said he was dressed like a teacher. Frank became angry and decided to act like one. He entered the classroom and told the real teacher, "What are you doing here? This is my class. I'll teach now." The poor teacher felt confused and left the room. After that, Frank embarrassed the bully in front of everyone. A week later, the school discovered that a student was pretending to teach an entire class and was about to take them on a trip. Frank's parents were called to the school. His father acted serious in front of the principal, but later laughed with Frank. One day when Frank came home, he saw another man in his mother's bedroom. That man worked with Frank's father. His mother tried hard to pretend nothing was happening and even gave him some money to buy something for himself. But Frank understood everything. A few days later, Frank's parents decided to separate. The lawyer asked Frank whether he wanted to live with his mother or his father. Frank became deeply upset watching his family fall apart in front of him. He couldn't bear it anymore. He ran away from home and went to another city. He had very little money, only a bank account and a checkbook. He stayed in hotels using checks, but when the checks eventually bounced, the hotel staff threw him out. One day he got an idea that checks could be altered. This was an older time when technology wasn't advanced. Taking advantage of that, Frank slowly started creating fake checks. He began cashing checks under different names, and if a bank manager refused, he confidently used tricks he learned from his father. Just like the necklace trick, and his work would get done, but after some time, his scams started getting exposed. His checks stopped working in every bank. Then one day, Frank noticed a pilot outside a hotel. Everyone was treating the pilot with great respect. Seeing this, Frank got an idea. Why shouldn't he become a pilot? At least a fake one. People would respect him, and his checks would be cashed easily. He went to the airport pretending to be a reporter, and told the officials he was writing an article about pilots. He asked them for important information. He learned where pilots get their uniforms. Then he called the shop and said his uniform was damaged, asking if he could get a new one stitched. After using a few tricks, Frank obtained a proper uniform. He was about to pay by check, but the employees said they only needed his pilot ID and he didn't have to pay anything. They would collect the payment directly from the airline. Frank had already made a fake ID, so he received the uniform for free. Frank then went to a bank to cash a check. The bank staff treated him with great respect. The manager personally came to him and cashed his check. Later, he learned from a hotel employee that pilots could cash even large checks, not just small ones, as long as those checks were their salary checks. After that, Frank began creating fake salary checks. He took airline logos from toy airplanes and pasted them onto the checks. Then he went to the bank with a salary check. But the manager told him he could cash it directly at the airport. Frank realized he could cash checks at the airport anytime, which he liked very much. The receptionist there asked if he was flying with them that day. When Frank said yes, she took him straight inside the plane. Pilots were allowed to board for free. Frank wasn't a real pilot, and inside he was terrified. But he still showed a lot of confidence in front of everyone. Then he went to a beautiful air hostess and asked her, "Is this your necklace?" Using his father's old trick, he impressed her. Frank looked older than his real age. No one suspected that he wasn't actually a 23-year-old pilot. Frank was enjoying his life. He also started flirting with a bank manager and began learning the entire system of how checks are created, processed, and assigned with account numbers. He discovered everything. He found out that a typewriter was used to encode the bank's checks, so he bought the same model secondhand. Frank was no longer doing amateur work. His methods had become very professional. Gradually, he started withdrawing larger amounts using these checks. His fraud grew into something massive. The FBI soon became aware of these schemes. The case was assigned to an agent named Cal. He was extremely serious about his work. One day, Frank met his father, whom he often wrote letters to about his life. Frank's father believed his son had truly become a pilot. He was proud of him. Frank told him that the government had taken everything from him, so he bought a car for him with his own earnings. It was the same car James Bond drove in the movies, but his father said the government was still watching him because of the tax issues. If he accepted the car, they would take it away too. Frank's father's shop had also shut down. He was still struggling. Frank even offered him money, but his father said he couldn't take money from him. Frank now understood the country's entire banking system. He would cash checks from one state while being in another. The FBI monitored all of his activities carefully and soon tracked the hotel where Frank had last cashed a check. While questioning the staff, they learned that Frank was still staying there. He had stayed for so long that he was familiar to everyone. Cal went straight to Frank's room with his gun drawn. Frank realized that if he didn't think quickly, he would be caught. He immediately acted confident and said, "Calm down, I'm from the Secret Service. Did you really think you were the only one looking for this guy? The entire government is behind him." Cal said, "Show me your ID. How do I know you're telling the truth?" Frank replied, "Do one thing. Take my whole wallet and check everything properly." Cal struggled to open the wallet with one hand. Frank then told him, "Look, our men have already caught that criminal. We reached here before you." Outside, Frank was helping a blind neighbor into a car. From a distance, Cal thought the criminal had really been caught. Cal started believing Frank. Frank picked up all his materials for making fake checks and told Cal he was taking the evidence downstairs. Cal trusted him completely. He told Cal to take the wallet too, but Frank purposely said, "No, you keep it," and escaped with all the important items. After some time, when Cal finally opened the wallet, it was completely empty. Frank had disappeared right in front of him. Realizing this, Cal felt deeply humiliated. His boss also scolded him heavily. Cal became so angry that he argued back with his boss. Meanwhile, the airlines were slowly discovering how Frank had been pretending to be a pilot. Continuing the scam became difficult. When the press learned about it, they nicknamed Frank James Bond. Frank loved this and started dressing in stylish suits, just like James Bond in the movies. Time passed and Christmas arrived. Cal was working alone in his office. Frank called him and said he wanted to apologize for everything he had done. Frank even gave him his address, but Cal said Frank was trying to trap him again. He replied, "I won't fall for your tricks this time." Cal then said, "You may have money, but you're very lonely. That's the only reason you're calling me." Frank felt hurt and ended the call, but this time Frank had actually given his real address. During their last call, Frank used the fake name Barry Allen, a character from a comic book. Cal then contacted his office and said, "He's just a kid who looks older. He's very young. That's why we can't track him." Cal told them to bring the list of children who had run away from home. Someone must have reported their child missing. After a long investigation, he reached Frank's house. There he met Frank's mother. When she was shown a photo, she confirmed, "Yes, this is my son." Cal told her that Frank was involved in major frauds and that she must inform the police if she heard anything. Frank's mother replied, "He's just a child. Maybe he took some money to survive. Tell me how much he owes, I'll pay it." Cal said $1.4 million, which was roughly $10 million in today's value. Hearing this, Frank's mother was shocked. Meanwhile, Frank was living in another city, enjoying a comfortable life. One day he had some work in a hospital, so he went there. A nurse named Brenda was being scolded by a doctor for a mistake. Frank supported her and said, "Don't worry, you're doing great. That doctor is crazy." At that moment, an idea came to Frank's mind. He asked Brenda if there were any job openings in the hospital. Becoming a pilot was now risky, so Frank thought of becoming a doctor next. He quickly forged a Harvard medical degree and went for an interview. The doctor there felt honored that someone like Frank wanted to work in their small hospital. To learn how doctors behave, Frank watched medical movies with different doctors. So Frank replied, "Sir, I want to help people in small cities, not big ones," and he got the job quickly. He didn't perform any real medical procedures. He only gave confident suggestions to the doctors. During their free time, he and Brenda grew very close to each other. Then one day, he was suddenly called for an emergency case. A young child was severely injured. Seeing the blood, Frank panicked inside, but he confidently asked the doctor, "What will you do in this situation?" Whatever answer the doctor gave, Frank repeated it confidently. He told him, "I trust you. You can handle this. I'll return later to check on the patient." Saying this, Frank walked away. In reality, he was terrified and shaken. Meanwhile, Carl went to meet Frank's father and told him everything Frank had been doing. Frank's father said he didn't know where his son was, and even if he did, he wouldn't tell him. Carl realized that father and son were very close and that Frank must have sent letters. By checking the letters, Carl calculated where Frank might be living. He prepared to go there soon with the police. On the other side, Frank and Brenda were falling deeper in love. One day, Brenda suddenly cried. She told Frank that she had once gone through an abortion, and after that, her father threw her out of the house. Frank thought for a moment and said, "If I talk to your father about marriage, will he accept you again?" Brenda was very happy to hear this. Frank then went to meet Brenda's father. Her father was a lawyer. So Frank told him that he had also been a lawyer before becoming a doctor. He mentioned that he loved watching movies about legal cases. With his confident words, he impressed everyone in the house. Brenda's father asked him to be honest and explain what someone like him saw in his daughter. Frank replied, "I'm just an ordinary man who truly loves her." Brenda's father was moved by this. Frank then asked him, "What do I need to do if I want to practice law here?" Her father said, "Since you graduated from law school, you only need to pass one exam. After that, you can practice." Frank actually studied for the exam and passed it, becoming a lawyer. The story then returned to the present, where Carl arrested Frank. Carl asked, "How did you pass that exam?" Frank said, "Why does it matter? If you catch me, you'll be taking me to prison, not to a courtroom." The story shifted back again to the past, showing Frank blending into Brenda's family. He was preparing to marry her. Frank expressed his wish to meet his father and told him, "We'll get everything back that the government took from us. Then we'll convince Mom too, and our family will be together again." His father told him, "Your mother has married someone else." This hurt Frank deeply. Then his father said he also knew about Frank's crimes. Hearing this, Frank was shocked and left immediately. That night, Frank called Carl and told him, "I'm going to get married. I want to forget whatever happened between us." Now Frank wanted all the charges against him to be dropped. Carl replied that he would never leave him. As long as he had a job, he would keep chasing him. He said Frank could not run after doing all this. After that, Carl presented an idea. He knew Frank could not change his name after marriage. When Frank became a doctor, his name was not Carl, so Carl ordered an investigation everywhere. He believed the wedding invitation must have been printed somewhere, so he started monitoring these details as well. Frank eventually got married and all the agents arrived at the venue. Seeing this, Frank went to his room with Brenda. Frank told Brenda everything, including the truth that he had been deceiving people all this time, but he insisted he truly loved her. He said he was running away and told her not to reveal anything about the airport or where he was going. The next day, Frank waited for Brenda at the airport. Brenda arrived, but she was not alone. Agents were with her. It became very difficult for Frank to escape from there. Then he came up with another idea. He went to a college and said their airline was hiring many air hostesses. After many interviews, he selected several beautiful girls and placed them around him. He entered the airport wearing a pilot's uniform. All the policemen were distracted by the girls. Frank walked out easily. During this, a boy who resembled Frank stood outside the airport with a car. All the FBI agents ran to catch him. When caught, the boy said a man had paid him to stand there. Frank was escaping the country very cleverly. After this, he committed several major frauds in different countries. Finally, Frank reached another location where he was printing checks. Carl requested his seniors to let him go there so he could arrest Frank. But his seniors refused. They said if he couldn't catch him in their own country, he wouldn't catch him in another. Carl then gathered more information about Frank. He learned Frank was now printing his own checks. Carl knew Frank was in Russia, but Russia is not a small country. He remembered that Frank's mother was from a small Russian village. After some research, he found there was also a printing press in that area. It was Christmas Eve again. When Carl reached there, he found Frank. Frank said, "Come on, I'll take you for a walk. Come out with me." Carl warned him not to run, or the local police would kill him. Carl told him to surrender, saying he could still save him. Frank told him to swear on his children's food. Carl swore and said he was telling the truth. Frank then allowed himself to be handcuffed, but when he stepped outside, no one was there. For a moment, Frank felt he was losing his mind. But the next moment, several police vehicles arrived. And now the story returns to the present. Carl and Frank were about to land in America. Then Frank said he wanted to talk to his father. Carl replied with a heavy heart that Frank's father had died after slipping in the bathroom. Frank was shocked and went to the toilet, where he began crying loudly. There was very little time left before the plane landed. When Frank still didn't come out, Carl broke the bathroom door to check if he was inside. By then, Frank had removed the screws of the sink and slipped into the inner section of the aircraft. As soon as the landing gear opened, he escaped from there. That same night, he went to meet his mother. He saw that his mother had settled into her new family and even had a young daughter. Meanwhile, Carl knew Frank would go to his mother, and he reached the house and arrested him. Frank was under 19 years old. Carl wanted him to be treated as a minor, but the government wanted strict punishment for such a massive fraud. Frank was set to spend 10 years in prison, alone, without being allowed to talk to anyone. One day, Carl came to meet him. The same fraud techniques Frank used were now being used by someone else. Frank asked Carl to show him the check. The moment he looked at it, Frank spotted the problem. Carl realized only Frank could help stop crimes like this. The next time Carl visited, he brought some FBI agents with him. They also admired Frank's unique way of solving cases. Gradually, Carl arranged for Frank to be released from jail and gave him a job in the FBI. He had to work 8 hours a day. Life had given him another chance. If he tried to run away, he would receive a 50-year sentence. Frank worked sincerely, but eventually he became bored. He accessed his own FBI records and erased them. On the weekend, he planned to escape to another country, but Carl stopped him and said life was giving him another chance, and he should not throw it away. He warned that running away would mean spending the rest of his life in prison. Carl told him he wasn't forcing him to work, and no one was chasing him. Frank left, and Carl anxiously waited on Monday. For a moment, he thought Frank had run away, but Frank returned and continued working on new cases. Soon, Frank met a girl, got married, and built a better life. He began living responsibly. After earning respect in the FBI, he started a company that specialized in detecting and preventing bank fraud. Who could catch fraudsters better than Frank? This is a true story in which Frank finally became a millionaire the right way. If you enjoyed the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel for more movie explanation videos. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.